Welcome to the HR Community Podcast. My name is Shane O'Neill, founder of Civitas Talent, the HR and HSC recruitment community. Each episode we will host HR leaders and discuss their journey and discover best practice HR solutions across the HR industry. Whether you're a CEO, HR executive, or operating across the wider HR space, this podcast is for you. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to comment and share your reviews. Enjoy the episode. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Community Podcast. This morning, I'm here with Derek Del Simone. Derek is the Chief Talent Officer at Abano Healthcare Group. Good morning, Derek.
Hey, Shane. Thanks for having me on the chat.
All good. Derek and I connected, I think, for the first time a couple of months ago at the Talent Awards, and sort of this has been in the pipeline for a little bit in between our busy travel and work schedule. So no, I appreciate your time, Derek. I guess back over to you, really. Tell us a little bit about who you are, tell us a bit about your role, and obviously tell us a little bit more about Abano Healthcare Group.
Yeah, sure. It has been a while, hasn't it, since the earlier in the year? But as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Talent Officer at Abano. We've got a unique structure where I have a counterpart who is the Chief People Officer, and I look after the talent side of the organization. So we have two separate divisions that look after our people and our talent in the organization. We are 230 dental practices across Australia and New Zealand, the largest dental support organisation in the region.
Yeah, wow.
And I'm a career recruiter, ex-external. He's done the shift internal, and been in the internal for 9 years now, and sort of worked my way through internal talent roles to where I am now.
Yeah, that's great. And You sort of touched on it a little bit. So started your recruitment career in external, in agency land, and then sort of moved into internal. Can you recall, I guess, what was the motivation there? Were you just keen to see, was the grass greener, or was that always going to be the plan for you, Derek?
Yeah, look, it wasn't. I don't think it was ever the plan. I survived. I was in financial services actuarial recruitment during the time of the GFC, and that was a significant butt kicking, that time period for recruitment, and moved into healthcare recruiting at the time externally. And then one day just happened to see a advert for vet partners, and I thought, oh, great, I get to play with puppies and kittens all day and work with animals. And I think the age-old truth of don't work with animals and kids is probably a good experience I've had in my life. So, I took the opportunity to join internal and go internal to establish the recruitment and TA division there at Vet Partners, and then my career sort of taken off from there and gone down the transformation journey, going in and turning TA functions or greenfield TA functions into more proactive, business-centric and growth-driven functions in the company. And I kind of feel, we've all been through it. Recession happens, TA gets hammered and decimated with redundancies and all that, and same as our colleagues in HR and all that. And I'm quite passionate about the fact that TA is a growth driver for an organization, and that we have to be more proactive and seen as a commercial business driver in a company rather than sort of a support function, admin support function.
Yeah. And I was going to probe you more on that, and I'm sure anyone listening will be keen to hear, particularly with the fact you've got that sort of structure in your business where you're the Chief Talent Officer and you work very closely with the people and culture team, but obviously talent has their own structure and entity. But before I do, I mean, you talk a little bit about transformation there as well, Derek. Have you found that the businesses that you've worked in, they've been very much behind let's drive change and transformation and quite progressive or proactive, or have you sort of had to help guide them and sort of get buy-in as well?
Yeah, look, I think so. My first internal role was with Vet Partners, and that was to set up the recruitment function. Vet Partners had only just formed about 15 months before I started, so it was a new function. And we had to be proactive in regards to how we sourced veterinarians in the market space. I was tapped on the shoulder to go to a competitor 5 years later, and that was to go in and transform their reactive recruitment function into more of a proactive recruitment function rather than sort of advertising and wait for candidates to come in. And, we had to be more aggressive or recruit harder, as they would say. And probably from there, that's where my journey took into recruiting smarter and thinking about the long game. It's not just about recruiting, filling the top of the bucket when, you got a leaky bottom of the bucket also always creates drama. And luckily enough for me, my former CEO from Vet Partners came across to Abano and tapped me on the shoulder to come and do what I've done previously with him here. So it's always been, recruitment, or the TA teams I've led have been in a reactive state, and it's been more of an administrative state, and it is transferring them into a proactive business driver to drive growth. The roles we fill are accountable for bottom line revenue. A dentist brings in $500,000, a vet can bring in $500,000. So it's really changing the story of hiring to this is the revenue that we can bring into the business.
That's interesting. And with the clinical, veterinary, dental, that whole space that you've operated in for many years now, like have you found it, and I'm talking more about the recruitment side, like have you found it's getting harder to find talent? Have you found the supply getting shorter, or yeah?
It's getting harder. And we have caps at universities. Universities are bringing in more international students, not investing in their English language skills. So when they graduate, they struggle to find work in Australia because they're not communicating at the level that we need for our patients. So they're going back home. And then we put regulatory restraints in there also from international candidates who can't practice here. We may have 3 of our universities in the top 50 universities in the world, but for candidates coming into the country, we may only take 2 of those top 50 graduates into our countries, Australia and New Zealand. So we're saying no to a lot of candidates that could potentially come in. And I'm all for keeping clinical standards, but I think we have to also become a bit more realistic that there are some strong countries out there with great education backgrounds and facilities that we should sort of open up our mindset in regards to that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it's definitely harder to find candidates. It is a constant source of pain every day for us.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess when you're in that sort of space as well, I look at in my talent and HR community, like some of the buzzwords and some of the healthcare companies that we've partnered with, you hear about talent pooling and proactive sourcing, and which obviously sound like a good strategy, but it sounds like everyone's trying to do that as well. So with that extremely short supply of talent, Derek, when those buzzwords are sort of coming out, recruiting harder and doing more talent pooling of the same talent your competitors are, just doesn't seem to be enough. Like what sort of levers are you finding are actually making a difference?
Yeah, look, I think talent pooling and proactive searches, we all talk about it, and I'm an external agency headhunter, so I've come up the ranks of researching, mapping out your market space and knowing it. And I think for us, it's building connection with the candidates, and the levers that we're looking at is definitely utilizing tech and AI to access candidates earlier and to help. We're all ex-recruiters. We all hate doing reference checks, and we all hate doing admin and using the database. I get it. And so for me, with my team at the moment, it's really about where can I alleviate the pain points or the areas that my team hate doing or are admin heavy, so that they can focus on building connection with the market space, so that they can understand, and be strategic in regards to how they think about what the roles that they recruit for, and partner with the business to find the right candidate. If it's going into graduate recruitment or supporting an international candidate to come into the country, to get their accreditation and to work as a clinician. So just being proactive in regards to that element of it, and really looking at, and I think, I've said this a few times in the past, and I'm probably more aligned with it at the moment, is I think talent acquisition has to move to talent engagement method and terminology. because our internal talent pool is just as big as our external talent pool. And if we lose that, then, we have to really look at, that retention attrition rates. How do we provide more flexibility for our staff? How do we, retain them and move them through? Because it's harder, it costs more to replace them than to retain them.
Yeah, massively. Yeah. And it's interesting you touched on it there as well with the engagement piece. And I agree with you. I think, in our space as well, we've had the luxury of witnessing talent teams becoming, stronger in terms of their capability to manage not just recruitment, but obviously the acquisition of talent in the market. And that capability has grown more and more and more. And obviously we're seeing technology now rolled out. We're seeing talent as a really highly regarded strategic function in a business. But on that engagement piece, I find it really interesting because it's almost like a combination of different functions as well. It's like, you sort of, as a in talent acquisition, you need the sales element. You need to be able to sell the brand. You need the marketing element because you need to be able to drive the EVP and the brand and the storytelling. And now, particularly in recent years, we need to be more tech savvy and be across, what's happening in automation, technology, and AI, and all those sort of elements as well. What sort of tech and AI adoption, if you are obviously adopting, are you sort of looking at, or is that something that you're hoping to continue to excel in, Derek, across your teams?
So this is my third transformation. My first tech transformation was okay, but a bit of a learning curve.
Yeah.
This role here, being my third transformation, I came in with a terrible ATS system, and I've kind of scrapped everything and started from scratch. And the last 12 months is really focused on AI and how can we use AI to remove the pain points in the team. And I could tech out geek about AI and recruitment all day, I think, at the moment, which is sad to say. But for me, I've definitely looked at interview screening, behavioral screening, sourcing. I mean, AI sourcing tool at the moment, we are getting 30 qualified leads from international clinicians to come and work in Australia and New Zealand from our AI sourcing tool, which it would take my team, a good 3 to 4 months of outreach on social media to get that traction and the work that they've put in. So this tool sources, engages, builds connection with the candidate. And when the candidate's ready to press go to find out more information, they deliver to the recruiter to have conversations. So we're getting good engagement. I think the key thing for me is AI has to learn. And someone made a mention yesterday that, you got to train AI. It's not just set and forget, and it's very true. You got to train AI, and the team have to feed it the information that they benefit for them also. So I've also tried AI tech that doesn't work for certain parts of the business. It works for one part and another part. I think you've got to try and see if it's right for you.
Yeah. And I like the first part of that response as well, because I think it's important for people to actually take a step back and then look at it holistically across, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? What's the actual strategy element of it? And then start to look at gaps and challenges that you're having in the business and how AI and tech can help. I've heard too many stories where people have just gone, right, tech is the answer, and they roll out these big expensive, sexy systems, but then, they hit the roadblock because it maybe not what they needed, or their expectations were completely different. And then once you get that kind of experience, a lot of the time people just pull the pin. But I like the fact that you've tried a few things. And look, I'll agree with you, even in our world, I think the days of relying solely on adverts on job boards has gone. We've noticed a drop in not just volume of applications, but also quality as well. And that's what a lot of our clients are saying. We've also noticed with LinkedIn, which is kind of our strength, particularly in our space, given a lot of HR and talent professionals are on LinkedIn. So, traditionally for us, very easy to connect with people, but most are overwhelmed now with emails and messages. And, if it's on an opportunity that's presented to them, it's a BD or a sales call or something that's coming through. So I think that's where AI has helped us as well have more specific tailored searches and enabled that connection. And then that's where we kind of come into the conversation. Then once AI has done its bit, like we step in and give that human engagement piece because I think at the end of the day, experience is going to be a blend of both
Yeah,
human and
definitely.
yeah.
And I agree with you that. I'm a bit bullshit in saying this, but I think job boards are kind of like newspapers. There's always a big section of newspapers for employment when I was younger, and now the newspaper employment is gone. And I think job boards have probably seen their day. The return on investment aren't there, so AI is there to help screen and source, and I think that's probably the way forward for us.
Yeah, definitely. And with your experience, well, Derek, obviously, previous and current, you mentioned vet partners, for example, like you came into that business and you helped sort of set up and scale that TA function, and then obviously came to where you are now, and no doubt you've gone through a bit of a sort of a restructuring, redevelopment on what they have and where you want it to go. When you're scaling and you're growing, how do you sort of protect or maintain the culture, I guess, within the talent team and the wider business when you're going through that change? Because, as you know, you're sort of coaching hire managers on, yeah, I know that's how you did it before, but this is how we do it now. So it's that whole change element. But I guess, yeah, to my question really is, how do you protect the culture and the vision within the business as you're going through a lot of change in talent?
I'd like to say I'm bullshit to say this is the way it is from now on and get on with it, but it doesn't happen that way. You got to bring them on a journey. And I think probably this role I'm in now has really had to reinforce that you've got to bring people on the journey. And especially because I'm bringing AI into the business, people freak out because they don't understand it. And it's taking them on the journey so that they understand, but also getting them part of the decision-making process has really helped. It is a big focus in our business to be proactive in recruitment because it's such a critical part for us. So having them buy into that culture and having the wins and showing them, we've really kind of turned recruitment away from the metrics of we filled one dentist for you out of three, but to saying, we've brought a dentist in, we've brought them in 3 weeks earlier than what we can normally bring them in on, and that's an extra, 45 grand on the practice's P&L. So we've kind of turned it, rightly or wrongly, we have made it a bit more of a financial transaction type experience for our hiring managers. And I kind of get it because they kind of see the value of what good recruitment looks like. And sometimes we'll get it right and sometimes we get it wrong. And I get it wrong quite a few times. But it's also getting them to understand from a retention perspective that if we're having to recruit, I'll say a dental nurse at the moment, that's $15,000 expense on the bottom line that you potentially don't see without having the TA there working clinically, the drop in revenue for the dentist, advertising, time out to interview, all that kind of stuff. So it's bringing them on that journey of that. For me, it's that financial impact rather than the sunny candidates out there will just interview and replace. They don't really always see that financial.
Yeah. And that's good as well, because I like in some of our events, particularly over the last 12 months, and I know you attended some of them. The interesting, like we had one in Singapore recently, and there was quite a few attendees in the room who weren't just from your typical people, culture, and talent. They were actually from procurement and other areas of the business, and they were there, obviously, for us to pick their brain on, their understanding of things. But it was also a good opportunity for them to see it from the talent side, and there was this whole realization that if everyone understands what the actual vision is here, and then you start working through the commerciality and the ROI and the financial side, because there's not much point in talent or HR us going, hey, we've got this amazing system, or hey, we're going to roll out this EVP, if you don't actually have a measurable ROI to that, and how much it's actually going to cost the business.
Yeah, and I think from a finance and procurement perspective, a lot of respect for those teams, but traditionally, some organizations bring in ERP systems where the HR systems are built on, all the recruitment systems are built on, and it's like we got this for a discount because we got brought in this other system, and it's not fit for purpose. And and you have to build a system that is fit for purpose for what you need to do in the organization, and we need to have louder voices as people and talent professionals in the industry. And I think we're definitely getting there now from where we were 20 years ago.
100%.
But I think, yeah, I do agree that, you know, procurement and finance are now starting to see the impact of not having best in breed systems in the organization from a HR and talent perspective, because that impacts them also.
Yeah, 100%. And just with that kind of topic as well, I thought I'd ask you a little bit about something we discussed earlier in the conversation was around, your current structures. So obviously, as the chief talent officer, you're overseeing the talent function, and it's got its own entity and works very closely with HR. I've heard and seen that work in some other organizations, Visa being one. When you joined the business, was that the structure, or was that something that you'd sort of come in to restructure, I suppose? And I guess for anyone listening who's probably like, hell yeah, we want that kind of structure in our organization, what would be your advice? Like, where could they start?
Yeah, I think for me, I'll say I'm big and ugly enough to sort of stamp my feet and say what I want these days. And I was lucky enough that I had a CEO that came in that knew what I could do, and felt that, and strongly felt that recruitment is not part of a HR function and should be a separate function. It is, traditionally a sales function for an organization. And so when I came in essentially in this role as a separate division, reporting through to the CEO, and have partnered with our various CPOs in the 2 years to sort of build that connection for us as an organization. I'm very, very pro having two divisions, because I think they are two different skill sets. But the most important part is that you got to work really collaboratively and together. And I think, sometimes as recruitment professionals, we do a great job selling the company, but we don't sell ourselves and what we can do for the company. And I think we have to start talking about the financial impact that we have, bringing people into the organization. And sometimes it's harder to do based on the roles, but that impact is important to show the growth potential from having the right TA team that's not restricted by, I still feel sometimes wider HR teams who are generalists restricted by, what is compliance and legislation versus what is a sales element of it.
100%, yeah. And it's interesting because this was something that we were trying to get in HR for a couple of decades, 20, 30 years ago in a lot of businesses. And still even today, there's a handful. I would say they're definitely more a minority, but HR would report into your CFO maybe, or your finance manager. It was very much a administrative, clerk heavy function, transactional function in the business. Whereas now in most organizations, HR have that seat at the table and report into CEO, and we're starting to see it more and more now in talent, which is really cool to experience. Do you feel like that's potentially the future of the structure for talent having that seat at the table straight into the CEO?
I think so. I think it's really important to have a seat at the table and have a loud voice. Like, if I'm lucky, I've had CEOs and COOs who I've reported to who value what I do and value what we do and as a team. And I'm lucky enough to work within private equity owned organizations who see the value of it. So there's definitely a growing perspective that talent is a separate function, because it is different. And
Yeah.
for it, but I think you do need to work very collaboratively with the people team.
Yeah.
Work on things, because it is, some elements will be cross-functional.
And I love what you've been doing as well with the brand, not just internally, but again, I think where we first connected was a couple of months ago at the Talent Awards, and since then I've kept an eye on things. It looks like you've continued to secure some gold medals and some silverware for the trophy cabinets, which is really cool. I guess for some of our talent leaders and even people leaders that are listening, that want to build their brand, get out there and create more awareness for their brand, for their talent team, create more credibility. Where could they start? Like, where should they start? Because maybe they're doing amazing things, but what's your sort of advice there for those kind of leaders?
I've definitely gone into the award perspective to show that things can be done differently and to celebrate my team, because I think the team work hard. I feel sorry for them because some days I walk in with some harebrained ideas and they jump on the bandwagon and support it 100%. And they don't have to, but they do. And I think, for me, I think the big thing is really making sure that we're out there advocating what we can do as an industry, because we have to have a loud voice. And I love what some of the awards out there that we have and some of the workshops and the seminars and conferences we have. But I think, I don't think you have to be perfect in everything. When I did my first award, I think it was back in 2018, I would say, I nominated for one award for the team, and you just get one right and then use that to learn. I think the important part is also using it as a learning experience to understand what you did wrong. And that's what I loved about the Talent Awards in Melbourne earlier this year is that you nominate, you put in your submission, and then you get feedback back on how the positives and the negatives or where you could improve. And that feedback you've got to take on and look at how you can improve, and at some point, go for more awards down the track also.
Yeah. No, great work. Like, I love to see it, and good luck with any other submissions you have in. And I think as well for, again, so the talent leadership community, unless you're extremely well connected and you've got access to these forums with people who are very open, you might not know what your neighbor across the road is doing in their team or their business. So you could think, I don't know if we're doing enough or implementing enough or we're creating enough here where we are, but you might actually be tenfold better than the business across the road. And I think it's important that we continue to be vocal and telling as to what we're doing and what challenges we have, and being vulnerable as well, so we can continue to improve ourselves. I think it's super important.
Yeah, look, I 100% agree. And I think, for me, I probably had this harebrained idea that I'd love to have a C-suite role in talent at some point in my career. And there's not many people out there that have that at the moment. And
True.
It's important to network and have that relationship with people in various companies to understand what they're doing, because sometimes it will work for you or won't work, but definitely explore it. And, I've picked up some great tech tools in my organization that I've got from just talking to some random people that I know in the market space. I'm thankful that I've had an executive coach for a number of years, and he's come from within Australia Post in talent and TA. And government's a different thing. Australia Post is a different thing to healthcare, but it's understanding what they're doing and just giving it a go. And I think it's really important for us.
I think so, yeah. And speaking of healthcare, obviously a bit more of a crystal ball kind of question, but given the demands in the industry, and obviously we touched on it earlier, the supply is getting shorter and more competitive, and you've got it's fairly established brands like Abano continuing to grow. Then you've got new players entering the market. You mentioned PE companies as well. Obviously, a lot of them are heavily invested in the health sector as well, given how much it's grown. But I guess health talent, it can be intense, constant. What advice would you sort of give to talent leaders or talent teams out there, so they're growing and they're developing and they're meeting market demands, but to avoid burnout and high turnover and reactive cycles? And yeah,
I don't know if I get it right all the time. I've had a couple team members follow me to various roles with me, which I'm very thankful for. Either they are not saying that I'm a terrible boss or something like that, but I think there's probably three things I look at, and that is a set of clear operating rhythm within the team of planning cycles, pace, metrics, the expectations are really clear. Always understand, but also within that, the second one is probably have the understanding of work-life balance and being a whole person in and outside of work, and what people's priorities are as recruitment and TA professionals, especially when you work in clinical, and you do a lot of international recruiting, understanding that, maybe the team is waking up at 5 a.m. to do a call with a UK candidate or staying up until midnight to call candidates in the UK, providing that flexibility for them so that they can actually have a life outside of work. And we've brought in AI and tech to allow them to do that. So, our tech systems are, AI tools are engaging with candidates, chatting with candidates. Dr. Wisdom Tooth, who's on our careers website, is talking to candidates in the UK, giving them visa information, making it easy for the guys. So I know that when they're on a call at 5 a.m. in the morning, they're waking up knowing that call is going to most likely lead to a placement where before they are doing all that hard work, getting on a call, they're not 100% sure whether that candidate is fully committed. But at the moment, we're seeing a better commitment from that engagement. And I think leading with purpose and autonomy, being really vocal in an organization about talent and supporting your team and backing your team to be innovative and getting them come on the journey with you is pretty important. But burnout is big in the industry. I think as external and internal as recruiters, and I think working smartly with tech, but also making sure your team has the right work-life balance and perks in the organization is pretty key.
Yeah, that's great advice. Love it. And even add on to that, like with the burnout piece, obviously it is a big issue in our industry, whether you're external or internal. But there's also a lot of volatility as well. You touched on it earlier in the conversation. Often in a market similar to the GFC, talent is often the first function to go. So I think it's just really important, regardless of where you sit in that structure, in talent is, you're continuing to upskill, you're continuing to share your value or show your value. And I think hopefully from next year onwards, we'll see a lot more roles come up in talent, but we might even see some more chief talent officer roles come to market as well. I'd be very happy with that. The last thing I'd sort of leave you on as well, Derek, and I really appreciate your time. What are you sort of predicting next year, now that we're coming to the end of 2025? AI has been a big I don't want to even call it a buzzword, because I geek out on it as well. But AI has been a big impact in organizations this year, in previous years too. But I think this year is probably when we've seen a bit more sophistication around things. It's not just a conversation. Next year onward, what are you sort of thinking? What's going to be the big hot agenda items for businesses? Will it continue to be AI? Will it be other things? Or
AI, I think is going to be the way forward next year. I mean, we're seeing a bigger impact of it across our organization and departments here at Abano. We have an AI council that I sit on now here at Abano that we filter all AI conversations through, because what we're finding is every single departmental touch point is talking AI, and we don't want to go down a rabbit hole of bringing in AI when there's a better tool out there. There's so much development in there. Do we look at AI and building our own AI agentic agent and bots in-house, or do we go down the track? But I think AI is going to dominate our workforce for the next, or boardrooms for the next 3 to 4 years, I'd say. And doing more work-life balance and work from home is probably the next big thing that seems to be the hot topic in the workforce at the moment for us. But I don't think anything's going to really pass AI next year.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I'd agree with you. I know in our community, majority of people are very keen on it and have been using it and starting to see some wins from it. And then you've got I guess the other camp that are sick of hearing about it. But I agree with you. I don't think it's going anywhere. And I think it's an important time for people, culture and talent to be, shaping that conversation in those board meetings. The AI Council, I think, is a great idea. I've heard of other businesses doing similar things. I've heard of other businesses actually proactively going, okay, let's just set up a framework here, a training hub. I see that as a big EVP for organizations as well, or USP for their EVP, I should say, for organizations. But I'm mindful for your time, and I really appreciate you jumping on, Derek, and appreciate the conversation, and good to see you again.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you for tuning in to the HR Community Podcast. Remember to like and subscribe and share your views and comments below. This podcast was brought to you by Civitas Talent, the HR and HSC recruitment community. Whether you're a candidate looking for a new role or organization looking to secure brand new talent for your team, please get in touch with us today. Thank you.